you folks at the Bipartisan Policy Center have carved out a niche as being the keepers of the X date, the ones that go through all the daily Treasury reports and tell us how close we are to hitting the debt ceiling. So when the debt ceiling comes back to life in January, it's just going to lock in at whatever level the debt is at that time. And then, but things don't really happen quite right away. There's some leeway, isn't there? The Treasury can do some things.
That's exactly right. So the debt limit is set by law, and it restricts the total amount of money that the federal government is legally able to borrow. So we're spending every day more than we're bringing in. And so the debt limit is basically just allowing us to make good on those past obligations. This is not the government coming in and stamping its approval on new spending or obligating new spending. That's done separately through the appropriations process. This is just paying the bills in full and on time. And so that level that we're allowed to borrow to finance that bill paying, if you will be reinstated at the level that will cover all borrowing up until it was suspended last June through its reinstatement, January 2nd of 2025. Why that's important is that at that point, the Treasury Secretary will be able to deploy what are known as extraordinary measures, which are basically accounting maneuvers that allow the government to decrease temporarily some type of intergovernmental debt that it owes itself, so that it can create additional borrowing capacity to issue new debt and then be able to, again, keep paying off those bills. Treasury will be able to do this for a certain period of time, but that period of time is exactly what you alluded to, Bob. That's what we're trying to estimate here at PPC. How long can Treasury rely on those extraordinary measures? And then also just the cash on hand that it has. We'll have an idea of what that cash on hand figure looks like later this year, but those will be really important indicators as we think about next year. Of course, though, we're talking about estimating the daily cash flows of the United States federal government. That is an extraordinarily difficult task that lends itself tremendous uncertainty. We're also talking about going into we're going to be entering the beginning of tax season, right? Starting in the next calendar year. That is going to have huge implications, how much revenue we're bringing in to be able to service and pay those bills. And then also we have to understand really what the consequences of some of the current spending that we're doing, and how that might impact what next year looks like. For example, we saw last year, or in 2023, if you will, the state of California had temporarily provided relief to taxpayers to delay paying their tax returns until later in the calendar year because of the natural disasters that the state of California had faced through wildfires and flooding. Right now, seeing the impacts, for example, of Hurricane Helene, it's too early to tell what those types of impacts, if such tax relief is afforded to taxpayers and small business owners later in the calendar year, how that could impact the amount of revenues that we're seeing come in during tax season. So, give that as an example, of course, is just to demonstrate just the immense uncertainty when it comes to trying to measure how much the daily inflows and outflows of the federal government, and that we are going to be taking into consideration very closely here at PPC to be able to then estimate, where is that, as you noted, that X date, where is that point in time in which the United States government could be at risk of not being able to make good on its obligations in full and on time, which of course could be catastrophic for the United States economy.